Hey everyone, Chris Lopez here, and today's episode we're going to be doing a deal analysis for an 11 unit apartment building in Aurora. So, this is one that closed in quarter three of 2020. So, as most of you know, the residential lending world definitely had some ups and downs, and the commercial lending world had a lot more ups and downs and volatility than the residential side. So, we're going to go through, talk about the property, talk about the COVID curveballs, and my co-host today is Preston Newberry. Preston, how's it going?
Great, Chris. Thanks for having me on again, man. I'm really looking forward to chatting about this one.
Yeah, this one is actually a very good one to do a case study on, and this is one that Preston took the lead on, put it together, so he'll kind of walk us through all the details. So for our client here, this was a new client, out of state, and a first time property investor. But basically, he's retired, looking to invest in some rental properties, and then a few years later, move out to Denver to relocate. So we did a lot of work up front, and we actually started talking kind of right when COVID hit, or maybe right before COVID.
Yeah, it was just before COVID.
I think when we first started talking to him.
Yeah, when we first started talking to him, and there was a lot of new things happening here with him getting into real estate investing, obviously in a market that he didn't live in, and jumping right into the multifamily side of things. So there was a lot of wheels turning with this deal.
Yeah, and this definitely, just because of COVID, it took kind of a couple months to kind of get everything in process and streamlined, and also just to make sure that the world was not going to fall apart back then.
Yeah.
And so one of the big things is we would start, underwriting properties. We had sent him over a handful of properties, and a couple days later, the terms from our lenders were completely changed. Like,
day by
we can't
day
do it anymore.
Changing. Yeah, it was crazy. Day by day, it was all changing, and so finally we kind of put the brakes on for a couple weeks just to kind of see what was going to happen within the world, and we're watching this deal, and when things started to kind of settle down a little bit, we decided to pull the trigger.
Yeah. And basically for this property, Preston, if I recall, because actually I didn't walk this one because of COVID, 11 units, all in pretty good shape, right?
They were all
upsides and maybe a couple light remodels.
Yeah, needed some light remodel in a couple of the units, but overall they were in really, really good shape. The seller had taken really good care of the building overall. And it just made sense with the location. We know this area very, very well, and knew the rent comps over there, and so there's some upside in the rent comps, and had some long-term tenants in it, which was another big upside for us, especially with all the COVID stuff going on. There were long-term tenants in place, some Section 8, some not, but they were all good paying tenants. So that was another big consideration that we took into account with this deal, is making sure, obviously with COVID happening and not knowing what was going to happen, if we were going to buy a property, we want to make sure that it was stabilized and had good paying tenants in it.
And this is a very important thing, especially now with COVID during the due diligence period, is really getting all the rent rolls and making sure, hey, who's paying? Who's on payment plans? Are people fiddling with fudging the numbers here? Like, really dig into that. So that was another big thing that we were
there was a lot of work
working on there,
especially with 11 units, right? That's a lot of leases to go through and a lot of rent roll to look at.
So where'd you find this property?
This one was on the MLS, a big percentage of the stuff that we find, Chris.
Okay. So found it on there, and just kind of going through the details here. So just walk us through the whole property and location around there, Preston.
Yeah, so this is not far from the Anschutz Medical Complex and all the Aurora stuff that's going on over there. Also really close to Stapleton. So location-wise, there's a lot of stuff happening over there, a lot of upside. There's tons of construction, tons of development. So overall, we just really like that area. And the properties that are built over there, especially the multi-units, are all nice, big, brick, stable multi-units that are really well constructed. So from a repairs and maintenance side of things, it's going to make life a lot easier on a buyer.
And is this that $1.5 million? You got under contract and closed at 1.4, right?
Correct.
Yeah. How were you able to get the $100,000 haircut?
We know the comps in the area. We know, kind of what stuff is trading for at a cap rate basis over there. And obviously this was in the middle of COVID. And so, there was an opportunity there for us. And the sellers were really good to work with. I really enjoyed working with these guys over there. And it was one of those things where the seller just wanted to wash his hands and get away from it. And the numbers still made sense for everybody. And we were able to put a deal together.
Great. All right, so actually going through the specific contract details, talk about how we found the property MLS, got under contract at 1.4, which I imagine that was just your normal wheeling and dealing, negotiating.
Yep,
and
negotiating, and a lot of times with the multi-units, it's all by the numbers, right? And so whenever you can lay down and put together a really nice, concise package to send to a listing agent or seller about, hey, this is why we think the value's here. Here's how we justify that. It really makes life a lot easier rather than just kind of throwing something against a wall to make it stick. So whenever you can present a nice, well put together package with good comps, it really helps.
Now I remember when we did the inspection, there were some pretty big concerns on there.
Yeah, obviously this is an older building. I mean, it was built, I believe, in the 50s. Biggest concern for us was, or one of the big concerns was the boiler. All these bigger units will typically have big boilers. This was actually the original boiler. So, the boilers can be one of those things that will last 50, 60, 70 years as long as they're maintained and taken care of. This one was kind of at the end of its life. I mean, they maintained it, they've taken good care of it, but it's definitely going to need to be replaced, especially looking down the long term. So that was a big concern of ours that came up during the inspection. And then they had some balconies on a couple of the units that were just deteriorated and needed a little bit of love. So nothing crazy, but definitely a big safety thing, right? I mean,
well, they need some new bolts to
keep
them attached to the,
they
wall too.
They needed some bolts and a little bit of welding, but overall it ended up not being terribly expensive, but it was just a big concern for us on the safety side of things.
What was the estimate for the boiler and balcony replacements?
Just over 40 grand, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And that was obviously taken into account. A little bit of wiggle room to make sure that we didn't get ourselves in a bind, but my understanding is I think some of the work actually came in a little bit less than that, so the buyer was happy with that.
That's great. And then what were we able to negotiate for the seller concession?
So that was another nice thing, working with these guys, really professional on the other side of the team, and so we negotiated a $25,000 credit, basically just a little bit over half of what we thought it was going to take to repair everything, and we all felt that was fair, given that the boiler was still working. Obviously, it was kind of towards the end of its life. It was going to need to be replaced, but it wasn't like it was malfunctioning at the time. And then, obviously a credit to help get the balcony situation taken care of.
And I think our client, his plan is to replace the boiler before this winter, right?
Yep, my understanding. Yeah, they're going to get it replaced before this winter, because the last thing you want to have to do is worry about taking care of a boiler when it's snowing or cold outside when you actually need it. So.
Oh yeah, I mean if that stops working in January out here, I mean that becomes an emergency, and
yeah, and all of a sudden
frozen pipes.
Frozen pipes. You're putting tenants in hotels. It's just way more headache than it needs to be. So take care of it now before the cold season hits.
All right, and then financing. So this went through. I mean, it was just bumpy with the financing, and that was just because of COVID.
It was because of the time and COVID and all that stuff, but luckily we've got some really, really good lending partners that we work with, and a couple good brokers, and those guys were on top of it and made this deal get to the closing table. So.
Yeah, and this is, like I said, we've always talked about lending is very important, and once COVID hit, we have our residential lenders, we have our commercial lenders, and some of our commercial lenders, their banks or their lending partners they work with, they kind of like froze for a while.
Yeah, their hands were just tied.
Yeah.
I mean, there was just so much volatility and instability in the market that everyone just kind of hit the pause button for a little while.
And that's why it's always good to have multiple lenders, multiple people go out there and see who's still doing, who's still got what terms. And so with this one, since this is a 5-unit and above, this is going to be a commercial loan, which means it's going to be held by like a local bank or a credit union and not sold off to the bond market like a House Act loan or a loan that's 4 units and less, like a conventional loan. So when you get these loans, they're usually a 5, 7, or 10-year ARM. And the longer the fixed rate period is, hey, if you got the interest rate fixed for 5 years versus interest rate fixed for 10 years, your interest rate is going to be higher for the longer your period is fixed, because that's something the bank's holding on to.
Yep, there's just more risk harm there.
So looking at that, and also looking at the prepayment penalty, because a lot of times with these loans, people want to, when they get closer to the end of their fixed rate, might want to go out there and go and refinance again before it hits the end. Or sometimes, if they go in here, raise the rents, add value, give it a couple years, let the market do its thing, possibly do a cash out refinance, or maybe go to an agency debt for a non-recourse loan. And so really, a lot of things we look at in the commercial side is just, hey, what's the fixed length you want, and then what's the prepayment penalty? And for our investor, he went with a 10-year ARM, and he wanted more of that.
Really impressive.
The rate they got was great.
Especially with all the COVID stuff going on. I mean, I was really, really happy for that.
Yeah, I think it was 4%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so got it at 4%, 30-year amortization. with a 1% prepayment penalty. So, I mean, really good terms there.
Yeah, and the other nice thing, too, I believe, with that prepayment penalty, if he refinances or takes out debt again with the same lender, I believe they'll reduce or even waive that prepayment penalty. So that's another caveat there as well.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
And the appraisal came in at above.
They did come in above,
That's
so that was
always
nice.
And then we got the $25,000 seller concession. Now, in these commercial loans, there's no PMI since you're not buying a house hack or residential property. And generally, you can't buy the interest rate down. It's just you talk to different banks and say, here's what we have.
Yeah, everybody kind of gives you a term sheet, and you pick the best one that fits your profile and what you're looking for.
And we had a couple term sheets. He had a couple 5, 7 year, 10 ARM options, and this was the best fit for him. All right, so now we got the spreadsheet on here. Again, we're using Joe Massey's rental spreadsheet. Now, his spreadsheet's really designed for 4 units and less properties, but for just the sake of simplicity on the podcast and the website, we like to use this spreadsheet for multi as well, just because it does a good enough job and a simple enough job to kind of go through numbers without doing a super detailed spreadsheet, which can be a little hard to digest over a podcast.
That can be a lot to digest and take you down a couple different rabbit holes. So,
yeah, so we put it in here. If you guys want to see these numbers, you can click the show note links, and the screenshots will be in there, or you can always email me or Preston as well, and we'll get you out the information as well. So plug in here at 25% down payment, $1.4 million purchase price. We plugged in the seller credit to $25,000. We put in $38,000 for the initial repair cost. And we also put in about in the low 20s for all the acquisition cost. So total initial investment is about $380,000. So it was all in to buy this, and you got that 4% interest rate.
And the other really nice thing about this is we were able to get this at 25% down, which a lot of banks right now still, I mean, it's difficult to find some that'll do anything, below a 70% LTV. So
yeah, good point. Because that's 5%. That's a good chunk of money on
on $1.4 million.
Yeah, $1.4 million house or apartment building. So rental income, now in Joe's spreadsheet, he's got those 4 areas for rental income. So what we do here is in the Unit 1, we put all the rents, which there are $1,795. And Unit 2, was that for RUBS or utilities?
Yeah, that's RUBS.
Okay.
Yep.
So RUBS, that's for, billing back utilities, so common gas, common water, things like that. And 541 on 11-unit building seems really low to me for RUBS.
Yeah, so there were some tenants, and that was kind of one of the things that they'll work on now, is some tenants were paying some of their utilities somewhere, and so that was going to be the upside for coming in and just getting the building managed properly and getting that sorted out. So, they'll get that taken care of with management.
And that should bring in easily an extra few $100 a month, I would think.
Yep, absolutely.
And what's the room there to raise the rents? Because we're basically, $12,800 across 11 units.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably between $50 and $100 a unit.
Okay.
And depending on if they go in and rehab some stuff, I think the plan is not really to do much to the units just because it's stable, tenants are in there, and obviously as the neighborhood and the area comes up, we'll start to see those creep up a little bit. But, this was just a nice, stable, turnkey, let it run.
All right, now we're going into some operating expenses.
Mm-hmm. So looking at management, typically we run all of our property management around 8%, and that takes into account property management, some of the turn fees, things like that. This building, on the multi-unit stuff, we run typically about 8% for repairs and maintenance. So you'll see that, and obviously there's no HOA here. Running through the annual taxes and insurance. So this is another interesting thing about this building. As we've seen a lot in Denver and Aurora and all the counties here in the metro area, taxes have been increasing at a pretty rapid rate over the last few years as we get new assessments every 2 years here in Colorado. So real estate taxes on this is $11,322 a year. And this building just so happens to be slightly in the corner of a floodplain. So insurance was a little bit higher than we typically see for most of these, but still made the numbers work at $11,600 per year for property insurance. And running through some of the utilities, and this is again one of the areas that there's some upside with this building and the RUBS and utility bill back. So water and sewer about $6,500 a year, trash $2,500 a year, electric just under $6,000, $5,900 a year.
Is that for, I'm assuming, like gas and electric?
Yep, gas and electric.
Is it all like one gas meter and individual electric? Do you remember how it's metered?
I don't 100% remember off the top of my head. And then the nice thing about this building, and this is a little bit probably more than we'll typically see, but about $2,000 a year for landscaping. I know after we closed on the property, they went in and put down some really nice bark and cleaned up the yard and all that kind of stuff. So there's not going to be a ton of landscaping and grass mowing. This will pretty much just be mostly snow removal.
And is there a parking lot here?
There is a parking lot right behind. So they'll have to do a little bit of plowing and snow removal, but that's about it.
Great. Now, there we go. Going to the cash flow tab on Joe's spreadsheet, basically puts all the annual expenses about $65,000 a year. Subtract that from the gross rents and leaves an $86,400 a year NOI or net operating income. Subtract out the mortgage payments, about $5,000 a month, leaves a cash flow of $26,000 and change. So, I mean, really good numbers here. 6.8% cash-on-cash return.
And look at that cap rate.
6% cap rate. I mean, we don't see those very often anymore, especially for, like, the bigger multis.
Yep, we're definitely seeing the cap rates come down a little bit right now. Obviously, as we talk with our clients with interest rates where they are, there's definitely going to be some more room with that spread between cap rate and interest rates now. But, I mean, I was really happy to see this pencil out right at a 6 cap.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, these are really good numbers. Now, do you think that the market is shifting, or is just this property got caught in the middle of COVID and we were able to kind of get an extra few dollars off?
I think that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
We got it at the right time. It had been on the market for a while, and I know the seller just wanted to get out of it. And we had a buyer that was ready to do something, but obviously wasn't going to go out and buy something that didn't make sense. And whenever we looked at all the numbers and location and everything, it just fit the box, and we were able to get a deal that worked for everybody.
Great. And then just to kind of wrap it up, I mean, what's the long-term play for the investor, long-term plans for this property?
This is just going to be a long-term buy and hold for him. Like we talked about, his plan is to get some properties here in Denver, in the metro area over the next few years and eventually relocate out here. And so this is just going to be one of those things where they'll go in, make sure, maintenance is up to date, all that kind of stuff, and just let it do its thing. So nothing crazy, nothing sexy, but it's going to be a great property for our client.
Yeah, especially the location. I just like it a whole lot because, North Aurora, there's a lot of transitioning areas. And this is almost across the street from like the Stanley Marketplace in that area. Like it's
literally blocks away.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can walk there. It's there. So, just being on the edge of that's a great area because that's just going to keep expanding out and you ride that growth. Plus, this is also an opportunity zone as well. So we've mentioned that quite a few times on podcasts. Now, our investor is not doing the actual opportunity zone, like investing to defer other capital gains.
But you might as well ride the wave, right?
Exactly. But other people are. It's going to funnel money into there. It's going to improve the area a whole lot. Or, it should, we should say. But,
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
With our crystal ball that we wish we had.
Exactly. But, hey, long-term hold, ozones are usually like about a 10-year play. It's in a great location. There are a lot of, really new stuff in Denver. It's just a great long-term area. As you said, just ride the wave.
And there's tons of activity going on over there just in the real estate world in general. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity.
And, just to reiterate, this was a really good fit for our investor because as Preston said, he's a new investor and he's also a long-distance landlord. So he wanted something that wasn't like a huge value add because he wanted to, feel comfortable managing it a couple thousand miles away. We hooked him up with our property manager and she's just been doing a great job over there. He's very happy. So it's just, it makes sense for his goals. It makes sense for his current living situation.
Yep, absolutely. All the pieces of the puzzle fell in place, and this is a really good deal.
And I feel like that's something, I know, spreadsheets don't kind of give that other color to it and that stuff. So it's always like to talk about that because, hey, great, this spreadsheet might look good for this person, but it's not a good fit for the other person. So all of it's just really helping people. And we spend a lot of time with clients doing this. Hey, let's really kind of pump the brakes for a little bit before we go out there
and on what makes sense for you.
What's the strategy? Where are we going? Let's play devil's advocate. Let's ask you some questions. What about this? What about that? Here.
And not just at this moment in time, but what are your longer term plans? What are you looking to accomplish in 5, 10, 20, 30 years? And how can we make sure that we help you do that?
Yeah. So if you guys have questions on this property, feel free to reach out. You can definitely pick our brains. or if you want to sit down and get investing into multifamily, or you need help in clarifying your strategy, that's one of the big things that we've been doing a lot more of the last year as we're refining our systems and internal processes, and we know this has been a huge benefit for our clients. So do not be shy. Reach out, help you buy a property, help you put your game plan in place, and we'll go from there. Preston, thank you, and
Thank
awesome
you,
job
Chris.
on this one.
Appreciate it, man. This was a good one. Thank you.